Welcome to our next module. In this module, we're going to be covering some major points regarding the American Revolution. I'm actually putting the first two bullet points up here together because they do go hand in hand. One, Britain was on the verge of war with France, and coupled with that, Britain really could have put the revolution down at any moment. So what I tend to say, a couple things about this, is that we were dealing with the JV team at best. It's not like you could put troops on a C-130 and fly them over the ocean in a few hours and fly them back if you needed them. So all the crack troops were left at home uh, to really address a bigger issue in the minds of the British government. And you have to remember, most of the colonists, they were not professional soldiers. They were farmers and merchants. And so, again, with that, Britain, again, could have put the revolution down at any moment. And it really still almost happened. You've heard the stories of Valley Forge and the like. There are a couple instances where, in one case, the British troops really had the colonial army dead rights. But even what I've read and heard about it, the military experts, they don't know why the British didn't go ahead and just go ahead and just put down the colonial army right then and there. And there's also another story about how really Washington was in a very precarious situation on Long Island, and fortuitously, that's a nice 50-cent word, uh, a cloud bank rolled in and allowed the army to retreat back to the mainland. Okay, and just one other quick comment before we move on. Uh, I've only really heard this in recent years, but a lot of scholars are starting to refer to the American Revolution as Britain's Vietnam. It was one of those things, they won all the battles, but they just could not stamp the revolution out. All right. Now, the next two bullet points I'm going to put there together, and maybe I could lead with the second one first. The last battle was 1781. The end of the war was 1783. So Yorktown was 1781. And then what you had the next 2 years didn't have any real conflict, and Britain and the new states were dealing with negotiations around things like, for example, how to handle the debt of these citizens and states back to merchants in Britain. But back to bullet point 3, Britain pulled out with the expectation that the colonies would fail in independence. All right, they finally just threw their hands up and said, well, what's going on here? You know, these colonies won't be able to succeed on their own. Why are we wasting our time and resources? Just let them go, do their thing, and they'll come back into the fold later. I've always used this little story about my wife, to kind of parallel this. My mother-in-law always tells the story when my wife was about 4 or 5 years old. She got real mad at my mother-in-law, packed up her little suitcase with all her stuffed animals, and her grandmother lived just right down the road. Said, I'm going to go live with Granny. Okay, have a nice life. Well, she let my wife walk down the street the way she did many days, but my mother-in-law knew at the time that my wife, then 4 years old, would be home by dinner time, which was true. So really, Britain was looking at the colonies as really just being upstart little children, right? And that they would not succeed on their own, and they would come back to the fold. Next, another thing we need to think about, and this is, I always say, a lot of what I do is trying to undo things that Schoolhouse Rock taught some of us. For those of us who are old enough to remember Schoolhouse Rock, approximately 50% of the landed gentry left after the Revolution. When we say landed gentry, that's a fancy way of saying the wealthy, the movers and shakers. So again, not everybody wanted independence. Not everyone wanted to leave Britain. And when it comes to something like this, just consider this for a second. It's really hard to draw a modern day parallel, but what if we woke up tomorrow and half of the Fortune 500 companies based in the United States picked up everything and just left, right? That's a lot of wealth. That's a lot of influence that just just is being sucked out of the community, the economy, and the like. All right. And then lastly, only France and the Netherlands recognize independence. So what you have here is, yes, the new states have declared their independence. They secured their independence through the Revolutionary War, but only 2 countries around the world recognized sovereignty. Everybody else around the world considered these new states as still being British holdings. We know why France recognized sovereignty of the states, but one quick thing, the Netherlands. Why the Netherlands? This is something you don't always hear. It goes back to the Pilgrims. When the Pilgrims first left England, they didn't come to the New World. They went to the Netherlands. And the Netherlands, very hospitable people, even to this day. And the Pilgrims found that they were losing their identity and their culture as they were living there. And so when they left to come to the New World, they left on very good terms. So that's where the Netherlands creeps in on this one. But again, right after the Revolutionary War, pretty much everybody still viewed these new states as being British holdings. With that, that's the end of this module. Again, as always, go back, review, pause, start as needed. And with that, we will pick it up in the next module.